Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Killing the Boredom, a podcast where I talk about things that I've watched, read, played, or listened to over the past week, in the hope that maybe you pick up something or consume something that you wouldn't have otherwise, or that you hadn't heard of before. Because I believe that art and media is something that we can all learn a lot from, and something that is worth being shared. So I want to share with you things that I've really enjoyed over the past few weeks. So without any further ado, getting straight into it. Greenlights by Matthew McConaughey, his memoir. This was a book that I was really surprised by. Like, I like a lot of Matthew McConaughey's films. Like, I absolutely love Interstellar. Dallas Buyers Club is great. His performance in True Detective was fantastic. Like, that is a career-defining performance for him for sure. But outside of his movie career, I didn't really know that much about him, really. I think he keeps it, for the most part, he keeps it pretty low-key. And then I saw him do an interview with Joe Rogan, obviously, because, Joe Rogan's massive, right? So, and he was, advertising his book, his memoir, and I was kind of like, I wasn't that interested in it. I thought it would be like just another, Hollywood hotshot, a peek into the life of, someone who lives it up, and I just wasn't that interested in it. And then he did an interview with a podcast that I really enjoy, The Mindset Mentor, with Rob Dial. He did an interview with Rob Dial, and it was really, really like interesting. He seemed like a very wise character, and I'm like, okay, look, I might give this book a shot. So I got the book as a gift, and I started reading it, and I loved it. I thought it was great. It was one of the best books I've read in a long time. There's a lot of wisdom in this book. I think Joe Rogan referred to McConaughey as a bourbon philosopher, which I thought was pretty funny. But I guess I get it. Like, there's a lot of little bumper stickers in the book, and his memoir is very honest. It felt very personal, and it didn't seem like he was putting on a front to who we think Matthew McConaughey should be. It was very honest, and there's a lot of embarrassing stories in there, and it just felt, or stories where like he talks about having a wet dream that made him pursue this adventure in the Amazon. I just thought it was so funny. Like, it was so human. This Matthew McConaughey, this larger than life person, who's been in these, he's won an Academy Award for Best Actor. He's been in these blockbusters like Interstellar. And to see him just be really honest and talk about stuff like, wet dreams, and it's just funny. It felt very human, and I like that. And that's relatively early on in the book. And when I read that, I knew that he was giving us a very honest recount of his life. And he talks about his upbringing, which seemed very rough, but it seemed like it taught him a lot of lessons, and he didn't see it in the way that me as an outside viewer would see it. He saw it as his childhood was rough, but it gave him the education he needed to be where he is now. And it sort of opened my eyes a bit. It opened my eyes a bit to just the way parents can be. Yeah, I thought it was interesting to see a different perspective on, kind of like rougher upbringings like that, because he's very well adjusted for, a Hollywood actor, because a lot of them go off the rails, that they get involved in really bad drugs, or they have a ton of divorces. But McConaughey hasn't. McConaughey, as he's gotten older, and he goes through this in the book, he's gotten more and more, I guess stable. Like, he's got a certain resilience to him, and he talks about a lot of these moments in his life that helped him. He says that at the passing of his father, he became less impressed and more involved in his life. And I thought that was a really interesting quote. I'm not really doing the book justice, but it's really good. I highly suggest reading it. And it's a pretty easy read, I think. Like, McConaughey doesn't try to be too fancy or try to seem too sophisticated. He's just presenting himself in a very accessible way. And I think that translates very well into the book. You're reading it and you can imagine McConaughey, talking the way he does with the all right, and you can imagine that in the way on the page. It's written as if he's talking to you, and it's a great book, and I think I learned a lot from it. And there's just a lot of wisdom in it. There's a lot of information packed into this book, and he seems like a very humble guy. After reading this book, I'm very interested to see what he does next. I've enjoyed a lot of the podcasts that he's done, especially his one with Jordan Harbinger was really good, and his one with Jordan Peterson was also really good. I know Jordan Peterson can be a bit controversial, not everyone likes him, but I thought his interview with Matthew McConaughey was really good. And yeah, I would highly recommend Greenlights, because I am not doing it justice how good it is. Just go out and get it. Anyone who's read it will tell you the same. It is phenomenal. It is really good. And I think the best way to sum it up is how McConaughey sums up himself. He says, this is not just a regular memoir or a recount of my life. It's a love letter to life itself. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think he does capture that, that love letter essence of he romanticizes his life really well in the way that he captures the hard moments, the great moments, and he's not resentful towards any of it. He's not angry towards any of it. He understands that has all led to him becoming the person that he is, and he expresses a very true gratitude towards it, which I thought was just very refreshing. It's a really good book, and I seriously cannot recommend it highly enough. But yeah, I'm not going to keep harping on about it. Just go and get it and read it. It's great. Anyway, next on the list of what I consumed over the past week, a TV show called Big Little Lies. I'm sure a lot of you would be fairly familiar with it. It's a pretty popular show, and I was a bit apprehensive to watch this show. I thought it was just I think I got confused with Pretty Little Liars, so I thought it was like a Gossip Girl type of show, and it's not. It's great. It is a great show. I was seriously blown away by how good this show was. There's only 2 seasons of it at the moment. I think they're talking about a 3rd season, but I'm not sure. It is self-contained. It's not like the 2nd season ends with a massive cliffhanger. Like, you can definitely see how a 3rd season could play out, but I think that the ending of the 2nd season, if they choose not to do a 3rd season, it is a good ending. Because I hate when people recommend me to watch a show and then I watch like 5 seasons and I'm like, there's a cliffhanger, and then I'm waiting for this, I'm looking for the 6th season and it's like, it's not coming out. It's like, I don't want to watch something incomplete. This show does feel complete. I should probably tell you what it's about. So it's about there's this murder investigation. So we see sort of a montage of people being questioned about what they know about the murder, have they seen stuff, and it's a murder that happened at a school fundraiser, and we don't know who the murderer is or who the person who got murdered is, and that's sort of the mystery that unravels over the course of the 1st season, and the 2nd season deals more with the aftermath of the murder. But yeah, it's got a great cast, like massive cast. So you got Reese Witherspoon, Nicole Kidman, Shailene Woodley, who to me is the highlight of the 1st season at least, definitely the best acting performance of the series. Laura Dern, Zoe Kravitz, Adam Scott, and Alex Skarsgård. And as I said, like, Shailene Woodley is like, she's the highlight of the acting highlight of the series for me. Her performance as someone who's had a traumatic past, I thought was very, very convincing. And I really haven't seen a lot of Shailene Woodley. I don't think I can even say I've seen any movie that she has been in. I know she was like in The Fault in Our Stars and the Divergent series, but I sort of associated her with that young adult sort of like type movie. But yeah, she really surprised me in this. She was very good and very convincing, and it makes me excited to see what's in store for her in the future. Reese Witherspoon, great. Nicole Kidman was great as well. Her performance was very, very pretty heartbreaking, pretty sad. Her performance was very like very good, but her character is just, this show's dark. This is dark, and Nicole Kidman's character is stuck in the darkest, is situated in the darkest plot line of this show. And so I guess this show can be triggering for people who've experienced abuse in the past. I won't say much else because I don't want to ruin something, but yeah, it may be triggering if you have experienced that sort of stuff. So maybe, because those sort of scenes where it looks at the abuse, it's very brutal, and I felt at times maybe it had gone a bit overboard, but I can understand why as well, because I think the main theme of the show is the impact of trauma, like how trauma doesn't just impact an individual, but how that impact can be transgenerational and how it can spread into the community. And I think it explores that theme very well, more so in the second season, seeing how trauma just kind of travels down these trees and doesn't just affect the person undergoing the trauma, but all the people around them. And it's very dark. It is a very dark TV show. And as I said, there are some very, very brutal scenes, which I found very hard to watch personally. At times, it's just very uncomfortable, and it seemed like a very realistic portrayal. I thought it gets its point across with how brutal it is, and yeah, it definitely gets its point across. And I understand why they did it, because it really hammers home this trauma and this abuse. It really hammers home how violent it is and how damaging it is. So I understand why they had to go that far, but I could understand why it would be triggering for people. But yeah, even though it's a very dark TV show, it still does have its moments of levity. It's weird. It is quite a funny show for sure. Laura Dern is very funny. Her character is great in this. One of my friends said he loved Laura Dern's character in it, but if he ever had to meet, being a retail worker, if he ever had to meet her on a bad day, it'd probably ruin his night. She's very funny. She's very stubborn and stern, and she's such a good character. But yeah, she's very funny. I mean, Reese Witherspoon's very funny as well. All the chemistry between all the leads is really good. The guy who plays, I don't know his name. His name escapes me. The guy who plays Zoe Kravitz's husband, he has a funny little rivalry with Adam Scott. At times it's a bit more serious, but there's a lot of funny moments between those two. I thought it's weird. This show is definitely lighthearted in a lot of ways, or in a lot of areas. There are definitely a lot of lighthearted moments, but it's still a very heavy show, very dark. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I would love to see a third season of this show. So I think, yeah, if you enjoy crime mysteries, watch it. If you enjoy kind of like soap operas, watch it, because it's definitely got that sort of feel to it, in seeing the way that the kids, the parents of these kids at the school in the show, how they all interact with each other. There's a lot of drama, there's a lot of conflict having to do with, this group of mothers and the way they raise their kids and what arises from that. I thought it was very funny. It's a very original idea to sort of merge this kind of like Home and Away type story, or these like kind of smallish dramas, and then merging that with a crime mystery where someone's been killed. It's very good. It works well. The execution of it is great as well. If someone had told me, it's like Bold and the Beautiful meets like, I don't know, Luther, I'd be like, oh no, that doesn't sound great. But I thought it was great. I thought it was really good. The performances are great. There's one performance of a character who I won't spoil, but it was so tense every single time he was on screen. Like, I felt a pit in my stomach. It was the acting was great, but God, it was intense. It was fucking intense, man. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a sign of, a good piece of art, right? Like something that makes you feel, when an actor loses himself in a role so much that you don't see the actor, you just see the character, and they make you feel scared, or they make you feel fear. That is I think that's a sign of a well-crafted piece of art. And yeah, so while that first season is an examination into it's like a crime mystery, the second season more deals with the repercussions of it, and as I said, the cross-generational impact of trauma and abuse. I enjoyed the second season a lot more, I think. I think that the show actually functions better without the mystery. And that's not to say the mystery is bad. I thought the mystery worked really well in the first season, but I thought in the second season, without having to think about where the show is going and trying to solve pieces together, I thought the show flourished more in just seeing these characters interact with each other, because they are really great and interesting characters. And I just like seeing that drama evolve and where that went. And there's not really there's a little bit of mystery, like a few questions in season 2, but nothing nearly as big as in season 1, whereas there's this big question looming over the whole season. Who did the murder? Who was murdered? Where in season 2, it's just more of an examination of just watching these characters interact. And they're just great characters. As I said, I would love to watch a third season. But if it ended on the 2 seasons, I'd be perfectly okay with that too, because I thought that it felt like a full story, and it's well worth watching. As I said, if you like crime mysteries, it's worth watching. If you like, sort of these drama type of seeing tensions arise between, people and gossipy type of stuff, I think it's good too. It's just a really good show, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Another TV show that I watched this week was History of Swearing. It was okay. If you've got 20 minutes that you just want to burn, you got something on in 20 minutes, you just want to burn some time and turn your brain off. I thought it was pretty good. Entertaining enough. I didn't think the comedians were that funny on it. I guess that's also because the format wasn't made for comedians. It's very quick, rapid cut. It's not this long form sort of thing. But so basically, as the title suggests, history of swearing. They just talk about the history of certain swear words. All right. Nick Cage is the host. It's always great seeing Nick Cage yell swear words and act all fucking crazy and that shit. That was one of the highlights of the show. And I did find it quite fascinating where some of these swear words actually did come from. And I won't spoil it, but I think it's worth a watch. I think it's decent. I think it's getting a bit of a hard rap. People saying, that it's not that interesting and, the comedians ruin it and whatever. But I think it's nice. It's lighthearted. It's kind of funny seeing Nick Cage, yell and swear, and it's fun. It's a fun show. If you've got 20 minutes to burn, there's definitely worse things you could do. Okay, and on to the final thing which I've been consuming this week. This is technically 2 things, but it's one artist. So Clipping. Clipping are an experimental hip-hop group from the US, consisting of the vocalist and songwriter Daveed Diggs and producers Jonathan Snipes and William Hudson. I love these guys. Holy fuck, man. Their music just fucking blew me away. I was shocked. I was, every now and again, maybe once a year, maybe even less, maybe even once every couple of years, you hear an artist where your brain's like, holy fuck, how have I not heard of these guys before? And that was Clipping for me. Holy fuck, man. I listened to 2 of their albums, both from 2014. So I listened to their self-titled and Midcity. So I'll kind of explain what the group is first, and then I'll go over each album and explain what they were like. So so they're experimental hip hop group. Their sound is very industrial, very kind of reminiscent of death groups, but probably not as abrasive. Midcity is definitely more abrasive than their self-titled, for sure. Midcity has some very abrasive moments. It's very loud. They use a lot of there's a lot of sampling, but they're sampling stuff like bottles breaking, or like they sample stuff like they needed to get a certain sound for one of their songs, so they like drove speakers into the middle of the woods and then played the sound through the speakers, and then went 100 feet away and started recording the speakers through the woods, which is like they go through a lot of effort to record their sounds, and you can it gives them such a unique aesthetic. So Midcity gets a bit of criticism because it's not as focused as other albums, and it's been said to be pretty generic. From this is stuff I've seen on like Reddit, YouTube comments and stuff like that. I have to disagree. So the thing that makes clipping so unique is that they, on top of this abrasive sound, Daveed Diggs, the rapper of the group, he is such a great storyteller. He creates these incredibly elaborate worlds in which the songs live, and he just really brings them to life. And a lot of what they rap about is about, at least in these two albums, is gang life, and there's a critique of like pop culture, for example. So in Midcity, the first few songs I can understand why there'd be criticism for it. There's a lot of the lyrics are a bit surface level about sex and drugs and getting fucked up and all that stuff. And it's like, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but I can understand why people would criticize that. But as the album progresses, we get these songs, they start to get a bit darker, it's a bit less about, these partying and all that. And it starts to come into like, maybe this glamorous life isn't so glamorous. And then, towards the end, there's songs that straight up about, murderers, and it's a dark album. And I can understand why, if you're looking at a song by song basis, it doesn't seem that conceptually rich. Like a lot of the songs just seem like a typical rap song, I guess. But it's not like that at all. And you can see as, through the album, as it evolves, you can see how it's not like that. And I think another way in which this is demonstrated is, even though it's been criticized for having generic lyrics, the instrumentals and the production is so in your face and so anti-pop, if you get what I mean. Like, it's just so loud, so abrasive. In the song Get It, in Midcity, it's like they literally use the sound of like glass bottles breaking as part of the drum loop, which is like, is fucking so good. A lot of the beats are just super hard hitting too, loud. Literally, like the sound, like the production is the sound of like an explosion, and then it fucking like clips. Like, it's like so anti-pop, and it's contrasted with these lyrics that are kind of like, like they're kind of your like typical rap lyrics. So, but it's very like, that contrast is what sort of first brings about the idea that this album isn't what it is on surface level. And then this evolves as we get the songs like Bullshit, which kind of starts with the same sort of like, popping champagne and sort of this glamour idea, and then it ends a bit darker. And then we got songs like Guns Up and Mob to It, which I think Guns Up is my favorite song from the album. That is a fantastic song. So these songs are kind of more about the commercialization and sanitization of gang culture in like hip hop music, right? Especially, Guns Up, which has this sort of, it has this, David is rapping and he's rapping about, becoming big in the game, and then how the industry dresses him up and tries to create this sort of image. And then the hook is throw your guns up, which just creates such a weird image. It creates such this, because it's highly auto-tuned. And it creates this image of this guy at a concert, singing yelling, throw your hands up to people. Then said, throw your guns up. It creates this image of just violence. These gangsters in the crowd with their guns. And then immediately afterwards, there's this loud, distorted as fuck, white noisy type synth. It's just so loud, and it just contrasts so much with the previously auto-tuned, altered vocal of the throw your guns up. And I think that there is proof that it's not just this surface level album like people criticize it. There's more to it. And Mob Tour is similarly about the sanitization of gang culture in hip hop music, and sort of how it gets kind of glamorized. So the lyrics are a bit more, they're kind of the lyrics earlier in the album are a bit more tongue-in-cheek. It's a bit more kind of poking fun. And then, as I said, as the album progresses, it gets darker and darker. And then we get to the song Killer, which is just straight up about, it's straight up just about murder, right? Which contrasts earlier to songs like Loud, which is about, I like the party, I like my music loud, I like drugs, And then the next song, Story. Man, I think this might be, from what I've heard from the first two albums, this might be my favorite Clippings song. First of all, the production is absolutely insane. It's just absolutely insane. You've got to listen to it. I think if you've got to listen to any song by Clipping to sort of see what they're about. Story or Story 2 from their self-titled, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Those are the main ones you have to listen to sort of get an idea about what Clipping are about. But Story is, we've got this insane instrumentation, and we have David rapping, and he's creating this world. He's the way he creates the world is so interesting. There's something very cinematic about it. First of all, he doesn't speak in the first person ever. Never says I. He's always speaking in the third person, and he's creating this world, and he's talking about these people in the backseat of a taxi, and he's talking about the taxi driver, and he's talking about the taxi driver, what the taxi driver feels and what these people in the back feel. And he's creating this world, and it feels like a movie. It really does. As the story progresses, as I said, I won't spoil anything, but as the story progresses, you literally see into the mind of these characters. And it's literally like watching a movie. I think it's such a fantastic song. Highly recommend it. Story by Clipping. I don't want to give away any of it because, as I said, it's like a movie. There's a story there. You got to enjoy it for yourself to really, truly appreciate it. I think that Clipping, this first album, Midcity, definitely benefits from a second listen to after the first one, purely based on the fact that, as I said, the beginning of it doesn't seem that conceptually rich. So having listened to it once, and then going back and listening to it again, knowing how the album ends, I guess it can just sort of makes more sense, the concept of the album, having listened to it once and then listening to the first songs again. Yeah, I think it also benefits from getting the lyrics up while you're listening is probably a good thing, because David raps very quickly, very, very quickly. And as I said, he's painting these very intricate scenes. So it's easy to miss details. It's easy to miss things. I think a lot of their songs take 2 or 3 listens to truly get what's happening, to get a really good, clear understanding of what's happening. Great album. Story's a great song. And as I said, David raps very fast. So if you want, get the lyrics up. I think that's probably worthwhile. That's a worthwhile endeavor. And then their other album, their self-titled album, that is also fantastic. So I'm going to get the track list up now. Yep, got it up. So their self-titled is definitely, I would say, a more focused effort than Midcity. It's probably I would say it's definitely conceptually more rich. And I think that's a big appeal to this album. This is many people or clipping fans that that I've seen talk about them in the subreddits say this is their best album. And from the two I listened to, I think I agree. I think Midcity is probably a bit more consistent because there are a few songs on there self-titled I really didn't enjoy. Like Dream, I thought wasn't great. Williams' mix I thought was okay, I guess. Work, Get Up or Die, I think they're all okay. But the best songs on their self-titled are like top tier, like absolutely great. Taking Off, like Story, this is just a great example of David creating this such a vivid image of just and just really putting you into the eyes of a contract killer in the hood, in the a gangster. It really just puts you into that mindset, and his rapping is so good and the production is so good. It's got like this echoey sort of drum, and it's fantastic. Taking Off is great. Inside Out is great. I love like the melodies of the chorus. Again, just David painting this very vivid picture of just sort of, he's not even, for the first two verses, he doesn't even say really what's happening. He's just describing this scene. But you understand what's happened, the context of the scene based on what he's saying, which is great. Like nothing really happens. He's just saying, there's this thing here, this thing there, this thing here, this thing here. And it's great. I haven't really heard like story rap like that where people are just describing the scene and you are kind of piecing together what's happened based on the scene that's there. It's really good. Story 2, I don't think it's as good as Story, the first Story, but Story 2 is also great. Really good story. The beat, as it evolves, like slowly over the song, it evolves and it gets quicker and quicker as it gets more tense. And David's flow is getting quicker and quicker, and it is really cool the way it evolves as the story evolves. I love this song. This is one of the favorite songs off of their self-titled for me. Dominoes is also great. The fucking choir. The choir in the hook of Dominoes was fucking sent chills down my spine. The production, and you got the sound, this like sort of reverse synth sound playing at the same time, and these like drums, sent chills down my fucking spine. That shit was incredible, man. And that's also great. Got a great beat, like great production. I mean, I don't know what more else I can really say about this album. It's just you've got to listen to it. Especially if you like sort of industrial sounding stuff. Midcity is definitely more harsh and abrasive than Clipping. If you're more into rap, hip hop, good flows, good rhymes, good stories, I would listen to their self-titled. If you're more into like death grips and you like loud stuff that's abrasive and just hard hitting, I would listen to Midcity. But ultimately, I think they're both definitely worth checking out. And I'm planning on the next week listening to their next album, Splendor and Misery. I might check out their Wriggle EP as well. So I'm hoping to talk about those next week. So I think that wraps us up for now. Thank you for listening. I apologize for my vocal tics and stutters and the ums and ahs. I promise over time I'll get better at it. I've never done this before. It's very awkward sitting in your room and talking to yourself, but I enjoyed it. It's fun. I love talking about art. I love talking about media, and I love sharing it with other people. So if you like the podcast, like and subscribe, and of course, like give me feedback. I'd love to hear feedback. As I said, I'm new to this. I would, I want to get better at this. I really do. I love talking about this stuff. So yeah, please drop a comment if you like, and yeah, thanks for listening, I guess. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.